Cars, posters, and even toys on the ground are just some of the ways Pixar's animators foreshadowed some of your favorite films months before they came out. But there's so much more to this video than meets the eye.
What's that?
That there is bad news.
When we add context to these tiny details, these films become a whole new world.
Coincidence? I think not!
Trust us, you're gonna come out the other end of this video with a new appreciation for Pixar.
Look, my years of training have prepared me for this very moment.
Jack loves Duke CABOOM. When the long-awaited sequel to The Incredibles came out, we all anxiously scanned the background for references to Toy Story 4. There was an obvious one in the billboard with Woody's hat on it.
Woody! What did you do to him?
But who didn't see that one? Beneath that obvious detail was an even more hidden Easter egg. Duke CABOOM is a toy within Jack's crib.
Duke CABOOM, Canada's greatest stuntman. Oh yeah.
You probably didn't notice him during the first time you saw the movie. Well, because you didn't know he existed yet. Hey, at least this entry shows that some kids still love playing with good old Duke CABOOM. Lots of eyes on Monsters, Inc. This one's a bit of an older reference, but to this day, people still miss the detail. Every fan gets so distracted during the toy repair scene in Toy Story 2 because all they see is that guy from the Pixar short. Look closer. The big drawer he opens is filled with a bunch of miscellaneous eyeballs. Why does it matter? Well, the next film in Pixar's release schedule was Monsters, Inc. You end up seeing them again when Harley P. Gerson gets a bunch of eyes placed on him during the Scare Floor montage. BARLEY'S unicorn in Toy Story 4. Of all the entries on our list, this one is by far one of the toughest to catch. The sizable fair setting in Toy Story 4 feels full of potential Easter eggs that need an expert pauser to catch. We did manage to find a big one, though, that set up the next film in line. There's a bouncy castle right by the carousel that isn't well lit. On the front is a very familiar unicorn. Fans of the film Onward will know that it's actually the same unicorn Barley sports on his van. Monsters, Inc. loves clownfish. Yeah, we all saw that Boo hand-sullied the Nemo plush toy, but there's more to this entry, we promise. Turns out Monsters, Inc. is loaded with plenty of clownfish depictions in the film to get people excited for Finding Nemo. There's a clownfish on the wall in the sushi restaurant, plus a clownfish hangs in the room Randall gets thrown into at the end of the film. It makes for a fun game to go back and try to spot all the different references in this film. Onward has soul. Okay, before we get into this Easter egg, do us a favor. Go back and rewatch Onward. There's also a ton of references to Lord of the Rings and classic Dungeons & Dragons mythos in the film. But alas, this video is about Pixar hints specifically, so we'll move on. When Barley is racing to clean up his role-playing game, he stands over a bunch of albums. One of those albums is by Dorothea Williams from Pixar's movie Soul that preceded Onward in the release schedule. See, it's seriously every movie with these people.
Okay, I get it.
The Land of the Dead watches The Incredibles. COCO'S teaser for The Incredibles 2 was so well hidden it took months following the DVD release to spot it for most viewers. To be fair, they literally placed it smack dab in the middle of a very chaotic moment when our main characters head off to the Land of the Dead talent show. As fireworks whiz by the frame, a poster can be seen on the wall that gets illuminated for half a second. It's for the Incredibles movie, but it's a send-up to the upcoming sequel that was about to debut. WALL-E finds Carl's Walker. The WALL-E Easter eggs are the kind that takes a trained eye from a Where's Waldo expert to spot. Face it, there's a lot of garbage strewn across the screen of this film, so we all tend to tune out the background of this film. Well, you missed a hidden detail that shows up twice. Look for the tennis ball in WALL-E's home. You'll find it's attached to a very familiar walker belonging to Carl, the main character in Up. Yeah, they hid it so well they showed it twice without most people noticing. Riley visits the dinosaurs. Here's an example of a big hint to an upcoming movie that only becomes obvious once you've seen the next film in the release schedule. Yep, we're talking about Riley's memory of her trip to San Francisco from Inside Out.
Oh, what about the time with the dinosaur?
We see two different kinds of dinosaurs in that memory. The full-body dinosaur turns out to be a statue of Forrest Woodbush, and the tail of the other figure is Alto. Both are characters in Pixar's The Good Dinosaur. In everyone's defense, it's hard to recognize Alto when you've never seen it before. THOMASVILLE collects Coco's shiny guitar. Coco flexed the full musical might of Pixar's team in a way we'd never seen before. Still, it wasn't the first time we saw characters performing pseudo-live music. There's a scene in Cars 3 where Lightning McQueen goes to visit a bar and grill in Thomasville, and some local cars are performing. It seems the Cars 3 team needed to draw on some of the mojo from the next film in line because Coco's shiny guitar is hanging in the background. It just goes to show, if you can't beat 'em, join 'em.
I need to borrow this.
Cars drives by Finding Nemo. Everyone knows that one friend who didn't even see the last scene in Finding Nemo when the tank gang escapes their captivity. That right there is already an unforgivable mistake, but they also missed out on a considerable Easter egg for Cars. As the camera tracks down to the harbor, a few cars whiz by on the street. One car specifically honks as it passes by. If you pause your screen at that exact moment, you'll see that it's the same design as Luigi from Cars. Honestly, he looks weird without his eyes and mouth. Mr. Incredible, comic book hero. It's the most famous example of an Easter egg on this list. You know exactly what scene we're talking about before we even get into the details.
Who's with me?
In fact, the binger is willing to bet this is the detail that you first noticed as a kid watching these movies. Yes, this entry is about the kid in Finding Nemo with a Mr. Incredible comic book. The scene is hilarious in context, but that didn't stop us from noticing this iconic superhero hiding on the front page of a comic. It's the most famous detail. The film that never was. Pixar is so on top of getting these Easter eggs into their movies that they even included hints to a film that never happened. Yep, we're talking about Newt. We know of 2 references that specifically call attention to this project that failed. In Andy's room during Toy Story 3, there's a sign that says Newt Xing with a lizard decal. We know Andy didn't own any lizards, so clearly this was an Easter egg for that film. Also, the witch in Brave adds a newt to her potion, yet another more obvious example. Andy's the only fan of Finn McMissile. Speaking of posters in Andy's room, there's another one worth noting. Behind Woody in one scene is a poster that clearly depicts Finn McMissile from Cars 2. We know a lot of you consider Cars 2 the worst Pixar movie ever made, and we're not here to argue that. What we can say is clearly at least one person was a fan of the movie, and Mr. McMissile. Otherwise, there's no reason Andy would put up a poster of him in his room. We're just glad he didn't take that poster to college. Hank gets prehistoric in The Good Dinosaur. By now, you're noticing a trend in Pixar's well-hidden Easter eggs. They always involve a character we haven't seen yet that we only notice after the next movie comes out. You know, in practice, it's a great way to get people to rewatch their films. Here, Hank from Finding Dory shows up in The Good Dinosaur. As Alto is learning to swim, the camera follows him underwater for a brief moment. Hank is camouflaged into the background, but is just barely visible. This one feels like cheating. They picked Hank because he changes color.
I stay here, I'm gonna get released back to the ocean. And I have extremely unpleasant memories of that place.
Doug takes a trip to France. Before Doug became the most wholesome character in all of Pixar, which is saying something, he was nothing but a shadow on a wall. Okay, that sounded dark and edgy, but we didn't mean it that way. We're trying to allude to his appearance in Ratatouille. As Remy first scurries in and out of the Parisian homes looking for a place to stay, he's confronted by a dog. All we see is a shadow and hear a bark. We can't help but notice that the shadow is clearly Doug from Up, although it was before we knew him. Lotso's real owner? Now that we've mentioned Up, we have to discuss the great reference in the movie that everyone seems to talk about having a deeper meaning. By now, you know about the girl with the Lotso bear in her room during the ascension of Carl's house. Lotso can be seen in the left corner of the frame for just a brief moment. Many theorists claim that this girl is one of Lotso's owners from Toy Story 3, but we honestly doubt it. In reality, it was only meant to build hype for the new film. Sully's totem in Brave. Well, while we're spoiling Pixar theories, let's go after another big one people always discuss. Remember how a bunch of YouTubers started saying the witch in Brave was actually Boo? We're not saying it's totally out of the question, but the details are just a bit fuzzy. People always point to the totem of Sully as proof. However, Monsters University was about to come out. It's way more likely all that Easter egg is a detail for that sequel. We hate bursting your theory bubble though, so prove us wrong in the comments. The DUNBROCH family gets turned into cars. Ladies and gentlemen, we present the most terrifying entry on this list. Face it, the DUNBROCH family from Brave has a distinct look, so they're hard to miss as an Easter egg. At Ye Left Turn in Cars 2, viewers can see their family portrait hanging on one of the walls. What's so terrifying about that? It's the car version of the family. What does that mean for Pixar? Is there an entire universe of car-like versions of every Pixar character? What does that mean for WALL-E? Oh god, the questions this creates. Monsters U loves dinosaurs. Clownfish are to Monsters Inc. as dinosaurs are to Monsters University. We apologize if that gave you SAT flashbacks, but it's oddly true. There are a few dinosaurs scattered across the Monsters Inc. sequel. In fact, we're positive every character from The Good Dinosaur outside of the humans makes an appearance. The majority of the Easter eggs are seen during the final part of the Scare Games. Pixar was back to their old tricks and included every dinosaur as a toy on the ground. Luckily, everyone was looking out for him this time. The Incredibles almost destroy Doc Hudson. If you want a free Easter egg, then check out the cars in the background of Pixar films. Odds are you'll spot the familiar design of one of the dozens of characters in the Cars universe. The most famous example of this came before the movie even came out. During the Incredibles' battle with Syndrome, Mr. Incredible goes to aim the claw to destroy the machine. During this, you can see a Doc Hudson-style car directly behind him. Can you imagine if that was really Doc? He'd be terrified of being bashed at any moment. Were you quick enough to catch all these Easter eggs on your first watch? Tell us about your favorite entry in the comments section down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to The Binger to show your support for the channel. There's always more content here to discover that'll build your ultimate binge watch.